Kilo 404 Boxing and More. Shout out to the LDBC. Shout out New Media. Welcome back to the channel. If you're a repeat viewer and a subscriber, welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I ask that you please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I want to say shout out to Blue Blood Sport TV. I just got done watching Blue Blood's video about Bob Arum saying he's only interested in making a fight with Arum Spence as it pertains to the PBC stable. He has no interest in Danny Garcia or Sean Porter. Just like Blue said, I'm a little disappointed, and my disappointment is solely based on the fact that Terrence Crawford is a champion. When Terrence Crawford was at 140, it became all about becoming undisputed, so he went after all the other champions. And Bob has to have that same attitude at 147 to allow Bud to do what he can to become unified, and then eventually try to become undisputed. So in that regard, it's disappointing because you have Sean Porter out there, still a champion, still holding the title. Sean's the WBC champion. Arum Spence is the IBF champion. And then, of course, you got Keith Thurman. I almost forgot his name. The guy ain't been in the ring so long. You got Keith Thurman, still the WBA champion. And, of course, they giving Manny Pacquiao some second-tier championship. But Manny Pacquiao can't unify. Therefore, he's not a real champion. Keith Thurman's the champion. I look at it like this. When it comes to Thurman, that would be a very noteworthy fight. And I'm sure that if Thurman was active and still, at the top of his game, still going out there getting wins and doing good numbers on television, then, of course, Arum would have his name in the mix as well. I do see where he's not, why he doesn't have a lot of interest in the Sean Porter fight. And the thing that Bob said that really stands out as to why, Bob says for it to be a joint venture between ESPN and Showtime, he wants a pay-per-view worthy fight. There's not another fighter at welterweight in that PBC stable. Matter of fact, there's not another fighter at welterweight, period, that could come together with Terrence Crawford and make a pay-per-view fight. So, I from a pay-per-view standpoint and from a business model, as they always say, boxing is a business, I do respect the fact that if he's actually trying to make this fight, he's getting to the business of trying to make the best fights possible, which is what I like. At the same time, if it has to be pay-per-view, it has to be Arum Spence Jr. I mean, that's just the bottom line. What Arum has done in Frisco, with filling up that stadium the way he done and making it as big an event as he has, that rivals what Terrence Crawford does in Omaha. Danny Garcia hasn't done that anywhere. Sean Porter hasn't done that anywhere. So, I guess when you're trying to compare apples to apples, you can see the comparison between Arum Spence and Terrence Crawford. It's not just about the two guys being undefeated. It's not that. It's beyond that. So when you look at what's the public perception? The public perception is that those two guys are the two best welterweights in the world. No one considers Sean Porter to be the best welterweight. The fact is that Sean Porter has that loss to Keith Thurman. And so if Keith Thurman was active today, he would be considered better than Sean Porter. Danny Garcia has a loss to Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. So I understand why he couldn't be considered the best welterweight. And then you got guys like Lamont Peterson, you got guys like Ugas and other guys like that. I understand why Bob's not trying to make a cross-network fight with those guys. I mean, that's just like when Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather were out there. You know, Bob wouldn't have been, you know, Bob nor HBO would have been willing to work with Showtime to make a Manny Pacquiao-Andre Berto fight. I mean, so when you put it in that perspective, it makes sense to me. And, you know, the other side of it is, what if, I think from Bob's point of view, what if he gives Sean Porter a fight, Sean Porter mauling style and so forth and so on, he goes out there some kind of way, ends up eking out a decision over Terrence Crawford. I mean, what if he's up on points and the fight gets stopped because of some accidental headbutt, and they go to the cards and Sean Porter wins a decision? I mean, those are the things that, as Terrence Crawford promoter, Bob Arum needs to be thinking about. And it's like he's gonna put, you know, Bob doesn't have a lot of top tier fight. He's not nearly, his stable isn't nearly packed like PBC. So he's only riding off of he's only riding off of, you know, prospects like Shakur Stevenson, the kid Mick Conlon, and he has two of the top pound for pound fighters in the game, and Terrence Crawford and Vasyl Lomachenko. And I mean, he, after a scare, with Lomachenko versus Linares, Bud Crawford is not fixing to be offered up to somebody like Sean Porter, even if Bud is a heavy favorite. Because if Bud loses, then that takes all the play away from Top Rank. Because we live in a society, you know, today in a boxing world, as boxing fans, to where, because of, I'm not going to get into all that, but for certain reasons, there, you know, people look at a loss as almost as if like, oh, you ain't nothing, you ain't undefeated no more. You know, and for myself, it's not about that. I mean, I look at what a fighter is. I don't care that a fighter's undefeated, or whether he's undefeated or whether he has 3 or 4 losses. I mean, there are guys out there right now that have several losses that I would favor over some guys that are undefeated. You know, with very little hesitation. You know, just right off the cusp. You think about Vladimir Klitschko. If he hadn't officially retired, if Vladimir was fighting tomorrow versus a guy like just say Kownacki, I would favor Vladimir to win. If he was, you know, even coming off of that knockout loss, I feel like enough time's gone by that he's over the loss, and if he's been in the gym and he's been working hard, I'd favor him to beat Kownacki. I actually favor him to beat Anthony Joshua. It didn't happen, but I favor him to do so. And I think Vladimir's up to about 6 losses now, maybe 5 or 6 losses. So, you know, I mean, that's just an example. I mean, there's many more, but I don't want to waste the time talking about that. But my whole point is, it's not about a fighter being undefeated or not being undefeated. But in this scenario, I understand Bob, for what all has to take place to make this fight happen. It could even be ESPN saying, "Oh, we're only going to work with them for one of their top guys," and Errol Spence is one of the top guys over there, especially at 47. You know, you can't argue the drawing power that Errol Spence has. You know, Errol Spence does great numbers on television. He's shown what he can do with that fight they had at Frisco at the Cowboys facility. Like I said, and we seen what Terrence does out there in Omaha. So I perfectly understand where Arum's coming from. Not saying I'm excited about him making that statement. No. I mean, I'd love for him to say that, you know, they're willing to get out there and fight any and everybody at welterweight. Like Terrence Crawford said, he wants any and everybody. I would love for Bob to say, we fight any of those PBC fighters tomorrow, you know. But I know Bob's looking at it from a different standpoint. He's looking at a risk versus reward type scenario. And for Bud, the only risk versus reward, and for ESPN, that would work in their favor would be Errol Spence, because they know what Errol Spence is considered. Errol Spence is considered the boogeyman at 147, and it can't be denied. So if Bud Crawford could somehow go out there, and even if he wins, or even if he loses close, that builds his profile even further. Now my thing is, sorry about that, I dropped my phone. My thing is, the question is for Bud Crawford is, what would he do after the Errol Spence fight? Should he beat Errol Spence? The only thing that would make sense would be a rematch with Errol Spence, because if he still, but at that point maybe they'd be willing to fight. Maybe they feel like they took the play away from PBC. Now it's on those guys to come get Bud, and because Bud doesn't have the physical advantages that Errol has over a lot of those guys at welterweight. A lot of the guys that are ducking fights with Errol Spence, they probably fight Bud if given the opportunity. Just because Bud's not a tremendously big welterweight, so they probably be willing to take a shot at him. Whereas Errol Spence, they just look at the physicality and looking at his frame and all that stuff. That's something they don't want to tangle with. Like I said many times before, when we're looking at Errol Spence and what's going on with him at 47, it rivals what happened to Paul Williams at 47. Paul Williams had a size that was unlike Margarito was like the closest welterweight in size to Paul Williams, and they were ducking Margarito. And then Paul Williams was after Margarito. He finally got the fight and he beat him. And then Paul Williams became the most avoided, most feared welterweight. And even after he lost that fight to Katana, and then he came back and beat Katana in one round, he went right back to being the guy that was on the do not touch list. So he ended up moving up to 54 and eventually 60. I don't want to see that happen to Errol Spence. I want to see Errol Spence campaign at 147 for as long as he wants to, for as long as his body allows him to. But I don't want to see the guy get stalled out to the fact point that he's only getting one fight a year, 2 fights a year, or every fight he gets is against someone that we know he's going to beat, because there's some guy that's really a no-hoper that's just willing to take that chance because they basically have nothing to lose by fighting. And that's not what I want to see. I want to see Errol in there with guys like Sean Porter, guys like Keith Thurman, guys like Danny Garcia. He's already fought Lamont Peterson. Guys like Amir Khan. Amir Khan willing to step up in there. He's already beat Kell Brook. So, Ugas is out there, and he's supposedly, at one point they were saying he was mandatory, but I guess he's not now, but he'll have to, that's a guy he'll probably wind up fighting, just because for Ugas, it's a risk versus reward thing where it's a risky fight, but he really has no momentum. He's not really a named fighter, quote unquote, so I can see him being willing to take that fight with Errol Spence, just like Ocampo was. So, that said, I understand where Bob's coming from. I'm hopeful that they make a fight with Errol Spence. And I guess the silver lining here is that if they're saying they're only willing to make a fight with Errol Spence, then that means if they're talking to PBC, they're only talking about Errol Spence. So there's not any kind of bait and switch or any kind of foolishness going on. It's like they're talking about the fight that we all want to see. So hopefully they'll get into talks, and hopefully, Errol raises his hand and tells Heyman that, hey, I want that fight. I need you guys to do what you can to make that fight, since Bob wants to make it. Because at the end of the day, if as Bob Arum said, if it's fair, everybody wins as far as making money, which is what they're in business for. And the fans win because we're getting the fight that we want. As fans, we don't care what network is on. We don't care what the purse split is. We don't care what where the fight takes place. None of that stuff. We just want to see the fight. So I'm hopeful that the fight happens. I'm hopeful that Bob isn't just talking just to be talking, trying to keep us tuning in to watch Terrence Crawford, because we're hoping that the Errol Spence fight next. We've gone down this road with Bob Arum when it pertained to Pacquiao, and like I said with Pacquiao Mayweather, they kept milking the public into buying their pay-per-views, because we kept thinking that, okay, the next fight is gonna be Mayweather, next fight is gonna be Pacquiao. And also the other side of it is we thinking that after every fight, Pacquiao's gonna just come straight out and say, I want Mayweather next. But he'd always say, talk to my promoter, Bob Arum. And kind of what Terrence Crawford said after Saturday night was, it's my promoter's job to get the fights, but it's my job to want to fight everybody. And I want to fight any and everybody. So, I just don't want us taking down that road again as fans. I mean, I'm gonna support Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford just because I like them as fighters. But I'm not necessarily watching their fight just because I'm wanting to see them fight each other next. But I don't want to see these guys with no hopers either. I want to see these guys in there fighting top tier opponents. So that's where it's disheartening when he says they're not interested in fights with Sean Porter or Danny Garcia, because there's nobody on that top rank side, that ESPN side of the street, so to speak, that would make more sense than a fight with Danny Garcia or a fight with Sean Porter. So it's like, who is he gonna have Terrence Crawford in with in the interim? If he's not willing to fight any other PBC fighter and he only wants Errol Spence, he needs to say he only wants Errol Spence next. Because at the end of the day, if you're not fighting Errol Spence, and you're not gonna fight any other PBC fighters, then it looks like we're gonna be watching Terrence Crawford fight some guys that have no chance. But that's the state of boxing. In today's climate, that's the state of boxing. So on that note, I'm hopeful that this tidbit of news is a step in the right direction, but at the same time, I'm very skeptical. On that note, shout out to the LDBC. Once again, shout out to Blue Blood Sports TV. Shout out to New Media. I'm out of here. Peace.